Well, hello and welcome to the Escape from Meannesota YouTube channel. This is Paul B, and I entitled this video Minnesota Sucks for a reason. The reason is because if you do a search on the internet of opinions of Minnesota, you're going to get a lot of feedback, shall we say, that could probably be summarized in those two words: Minnesota sucks. And it's not to say that there aren't other states out there that probably have, um, Texas sucks and Arizona sucks. Everything out there has its opposite, opposing website and sentiments. But what I wanted to do here was just really quickly run through some of the comments on the internet from other people who have had encounters with Minnesota. And the reason is because I want to show that the problem isn't Minnesota. Everyone thinks it is, and I originally thought it was too. The real problem is Meannesota. And the reason I entitled this video Minnesota Sucks is because I know for a fact that's going to attract a lot of people. I know there's a lot of people out there typing in the phrase Minnesota sucks, because it does. But it isn't Minnesota that's the problem. And I think if you go through my website and my other videos and you realize what Meannesota is, it's the dominant subculture in Minnesota. It's the cult, and a very dangerous cult, very vicious, mean-spirited, ruthless, and dangerous cult. That is what's responsible for what all these people are seeing that they attribute to Minnesota. And I just want to be fair that Minnesota isn't the problem. There are good and decent and normal and stable people in Minnesota. There aren't many of them. They're definitely the minority, but they're there. And it really isn't fair for anyone to accuse Minnesota of being the problem. The problem is this cult that dominates Minnesota, which I call Minnesota. So I don't really have a plan here. I'm just going to read a couple of things to anyone who has seen my videos or seen my website, Meannesota.com, is going to immediately recognize what these other people who I don't know are saying. Let's see here. I mean, there's so much here, I don't even know where to begin. Okay, so from back in 2005, this person named Ha said, I am all with you about this stupid freezer. It is hard meeting people here. They're so stuck up that even when you say hi to them on the street, they give you this look. What the hell are you saying hi to me for? Okay, another commentator named Michelle said, Minnesota is, by far, the nation's biggest shithole. The natives are a bunch of backwards, poorly dressed, cheap bastards who are under the impression that not having the guts to actually look someone in the eye and tell the truth somehow qualifies as nice. Let's see, what else do we have here? Blogger Kyle said, Fuck Minnesota. It's a crap hole full of North Necks. I don't care about what some poll said, because there are dozens of other polls that disagree. Ranked by the game cranium? That's supposed to actually mean something? The food sucks, the women are ugly and overweight, the dating scene is horrible, the people are not friendly, the roads are the worst I've ever driven, the list goes on and on. Minnesota needs to wise the fuck up. Carla said, You are so right. It sucks so bad in Minnesota. I've lived here all my life, born and raised in the Twin Cities. The people are spineless, afraid of spice. Phony nice, afraid to venture out of their comfort zone. Clannish, snobbish, self-righteous, boring. Let's see. Another blogger named Chef says, Unbelievable. I have been having such a difficult time in the Twin Cities. I moved here 1 year ago. I am a chef. I grew up in New Orleans. I have lived in Munich and New York. I have traveled to over 32 countries in the world and have seen most of the USA. Minnesota wins the prize. It is the absolute worst place on earth. And then in parentheses it says, even Moscow in the winter is better. The people are xenophobic, socially inept, passive-aggressive, petty, rude, lacking in style and grace, narrow-minded, and yet completely delusional about how great they are. They create the standards by which they wish to be graded and then grade themselves, giving themselves grade A, naturally. In short, Minnesotans suffer from cerebral atrophy. Another blogger called Hot Mama says, Minnesota does suck. I also have lived here all my life, but have traveled all over the USA. People in Minnesota are so rude. I don't get the Minnesota nice thing. It's all bullcrap. The weather sucks, people suck. It's not all that beautiful. Blogger Madman1 says, I have lived here for 8 years now and 30 years in California prior. I have been in 16 states, and I can tell you the people here are phony, rude, Minnesota nice my ass, egotistical, and yes, the weather really sucks. And a lot of people talk about the weather here. All right, you know what? I'm going to stop here and put my machine down. The point I want to make is that these comments go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And the only thing that counteracts them on these blog posts are these Minnesota apologists who infiltrate these things, and they do one of two things. They either, like this one person said, quote, polls and surveys and statistics to try to portray Minnesota as a worthwhile place. You know, well, we're ranked as the most friendly state in the country. We have the most churches per capita. You know, and statistics mean absolutely nothing. I mean, if anything, you can cook the books. A lot of these polls and surveys come out of the University of Minnesota or some affiliated institution anyway. And statistics mean nothing. The human experience is what matters. And anyone who can't figure that out does indeed have some kind of cerebral atrophy. And of course, the other way that these Minnesotans apologize for their state is to just launch vicious ad hominem attacks against anyone who criticizes it, which, you know, that's the characteristic of a cult. So you'll see a lot of these apologists on these websites just coming in, talking to people they don't even know, who are just voicing their honest experience and their disgust with that experience in Minnesota. But these Minnesotans come in there and say, well, apparently they know this about a total stranger. You're an asshole. You're a jackass. You're a jerk. You know, and then they say something like, we don't want you in this state anyway. Just go ahead and move. Why don't you just move? And by doing so, they're revealing who they really are. We don't want you in our state. Us and them. That is a cult mentality. We are the insiders. You are an outsider. Get the hell out of our state if you don't like it. And that just goes to verify exactly what all these people are saying about Minnesotans having no social skills and basically running a cult. But the thing is, notice everyone's pointing out that people are rude, that they're phony, they're fake, they're deceptive, they do not have social skills. There's problems socially with these people is the main complaint that they're having here. And they point out that Minnesota nice is a lie. Now, my goal here is not to read you a whole bunch of quotations against Minnesota. I mean, all you have to do is go online. You will find them yourself. They're everywhere. My point is to show that these people are all pointing out something that's very consistent. What I just mentioned. Everything you just heard are the basic complaints you will hear about Minnesota from Minnesota Transplants. The fakeness, the phoniness, the fact that Minnesota nice is a bunch of baloney. It's a lie. It's a myth. The reason I'm mentioning all this, and the reason I listed the title of this video as Minnesota Sucks, is because I want to invite anybody who believes that Minnesota sucks to visit my website, www.meannesota.com. Also, watch my videos on this YouTube channel, Escape from Meannesota. Because the reason is, I explain the reason that you're experiencing what you're experiencing in Minnesota. It is not Minnesota per se. It is not all Minnesotans who are this way. The problem with Minnesota is that it is dominated by a vicious, mean-spirited, ruthless, yes, socially inept cult. A good old boy system where you're either inside or you're outside. And transplants to Minnesota know that. I mean, I can identify a transplant almost immediately just by talking to them in a line at a grocery store. It takes maybe 2 rounds of going back and forth saying stuff to each other before one of us is going to say, are you from Minnesota? because we can just tell, because the other person behaves in a normal social manner. And that doesn't make any sense, right? But it does if you understand Meannesota. So anyway, the reason for this video was basically to draw people in who type in the phrase Minnesota sucks. I want you to know what it really is, what the real problem is. Why does Minnesota suck? It's because it's dominated by the most dangerous cult in the United States of America, Meannesota. And what you're butting heads against with here, with these people who are so fake and phony, it's a consequence of this cult, Meannesota. And not every Minnesotan is a bad person. In my estimation, Meannesota dominates, I would say, 3 out of 5 to 4 out of 5 Minnesotans. So it definitely is the majority. It may very well be the vast majority of people in Minnesota who are raised in this cult mentality that I call Meannesota. But Meannesota explains the myth of Minnesota nice. So anyway, that's all I really had to say. I want to thank you for listening to this video. If you did type in the phrase Minnesota sucks, or if that drew your attention because you had some reason to believe that Minnesota sucks, I encourage you to go to my website, Meannesota.com. Read what's there. That has my own personal story, but it also explains how this cult operates, and so do the videos on my YouTube channel here. So I guess in that sense I'm providing this video as a public service more than anything. Even though the cult of Meannesota has completely destroyed my life and probably has murdered me, I don't want every Minnesotan to take the blame for that, because there are good and decent people here. And I think the people who made these comments on the internet, I think they instinctively realize there are some good people here, but they're in such a minority that there's no way for you to function socially the way that you would function anywhere else on the planet. Because Meannesota is one jacked up cult. And it's a mean cult, and it's a dangerous cult. So anyway, I invite you to learn more about it. Please spread the word. Let people know that Minnesota nice is a myth, but not just by lashing out at Minnesota, but by letting them know about the existence of Meannesota. Because again, they send representatives to the federal government where those representatives affect the people in every other state in the United States and all 7 billion people on the face of the earth. So we've got to get the word out about Meannesota. We have to let people know that Minnesota nice is a myth, and that this state is dominated by a vicious cult, a cult that at this moment, as I say these words, is murdering me right in front of everyone's eyes. In fact, it's possible that when you view this video, I'll already be dead. That's how vicious this cult is. That's all I have for you. Thank you very much for listening, and if you feel that I behaved like a Minnesotan and deceived you by putting the phrase Minnesota sucks up in the title, I apologize profusely, but I will say, Minnesota sucks.